Okay on that.
All right, hi everybody. It's Kevin Raber, and we're back again. It's December 18th, and hey, it's a week before Christmas. Do you believe that? In one more week, it's Christmas time, and I'm looking forward to a very laid-back Christmas. It's been one of those years where we're just going to have a small family get together and enjoy a honey baked ham together and all the things that go with it. We have a new baby that's less than 4 weeks old, a grandchild. Not Deborah and I have a new baby, but we have a grandchild. That would
I
be
was going to
pretty
say,
cool,
when
wouldn't
you were
it?
telling us.
Yeah, man. Oh, God. So anyway, we have Deborah's daughter has a new grandbaby, and I got to hold that baby the other night on my chest for like over an hour, and it just slept, and it was like, oh, it was heavenly. So this is kind of exciting. So we'll have a nice Christmas, and I want to wish you all, before we get started, the happiest Christmas, and I hope you all enjoy yourself. Go out and take pictures and have some fun. Today's guest is John Barclay. If I can make the thing work, what's going on here? There we go. And I've known John for quite a while, as I've known a lot of photographers for quite a while. John and I bump into each other a lot during the year in the Palouse. We end up at the same breakfast joints and places like that. But we both are firm believers in a lot of the same things, and it's great once in a while when you go to these locations and get a chance to see each other. John's an incredible photographer. He's been out there a long time. He has a great approach to doing some things, which I'll let him share with you. I do have something to read about John, because I do prepare a little bit. So he's an accomplished photographer, celebrated for his ability to capture the interplay of light, texture, and emotion in his work. With a passion for landscape and abstract photography, Barclay employs his camera as a tool for both the artistic expression and self-discovery. His portfolio showcases a deep connection to the natural world, highlighting dramatic vistas and intimate details that often go unnoticed. He's widely recognized for his use of light to evoke mood and tell stories, offering viewers a perspective that is both contemplative and inspiring. And I think, that's what John really does well. He also holds kind of a workshop where you can kind of reflect on a lot of these things when he's in Hawaii. He can tell us a little bit about that as we go. Before we move into introducing John in person, just want to let you know that we have January 1st, we're not doing a Zoom photo chat just because it's the holiday, but we'll be back on the 15th. I've got a speaker that I'm just waiting for confirmation on. On the 29th of January, Tillman Crane is joining us. And then in February 26th, we have Eric Miola. Everybody knows Eric, a great photographer on color.
Should you be showing a screen that has those names on it?
Aren't you seeing him?
No, I'm
Oh,
still seeing the main screen with John's name.
Really? I'm flicking around here and it's
no,
just,
it's
No.
not. Yeah, we're having all sorts of technical challenges today,
okay,
folks.
wait a minute. Let's just see here. Stop sharing. And I'll try again. Okay.
Okay.
There's always multiple participants can share. One participant can share at a time. We'll try that. And then share. Try that. You would think by now,
Yeah,
how
now
about
we,
that?
yeah,
Now
now
we
we
see
see it
the
right.
slide you were talking about,
All
right?
right. So, and Eric Miola, he just put a really, really good book out. I'll be doing a review on that in the next few weeks. And his work is incredible. He's been one of the inspirers of me for color, along with Pete Turner and Jay Mizell. So you'll get a chance to hear him in person. And we do have another person looking for I think it was the 12th of February. So we'll talk more about that when we get a little closer to. Your host for this photo chats is Jeff Shiwi, who doesn't appear to be here today because he's out gallivanting around improving his photographic artistry. There's myself, Kevin Raber, and John Cornicello, who is
Hey
the
there.
originator of the photo chats idea back during the pandemic, and Holger Mischke from Germany, but I don't see him here yet, but he might
He's
be
there.
joining us. Oh, he's there. Hey, Holger. So I got a number of things. I just always kind of have to put my plug in for where we're going, because without these things, I can't stay afloat. They're my bread and butter. But we do have 5 fine art printing workshops, which are the March and the May workshops are booking up pretty quickly. Faroe Islands workshop. We only have a few spots left in that in May. I'm doing one private workshop there and then one regular workshop. And then I've got the Palouse in June 16th and the 23rd. Two back-to-back workshops. There's 2 spots left in each of those at this point. Remember, I only do 5 people in my workshops, 1 vehicle, and drive you all over the place to places that fellows like John and I get to know a lot of the farmers and things out there, and it's quite the trip. And then for the first time in a long time, I'm doing a Palouse harvest workshop. Normally, I'm photographing in Svalbard or Greenland, but those ship-based crews, the restrictions there now have gotten so heavy that I've stopped doing ship-based trips for now, and I'm looking forward to staying domestic this year and doing the Palouse harvest in August. So if any of you are interested in a fabulous opportunity to take some great pictures, those are some great trips to get on. I have a bunch more I'm working on that will appear for the rest of 25 and 26 and some other special things. So stay tuned and we'll announce those as we get closer to being able to announce those. In a couple minutes, or when I'll be muting everybody. Please ask questions in the chat. We probably won't interrupt John during this presentation. Then you can unmute your microphones at the end, or we'll call on you, or you can just unmute them and feel free to ask questions of John. And then after John's presentation, we'll stay online for a few minutes in case anybody just wants to chat with each other, and we'll go off from there. So this is our little thing with John. I'm going to come down here and unshare, and there I am. And John, thank you for being with us today, and really look forward to doing this program. Really look forward to bumping into you again sometime soon. And feel free to tell us all about some of the other things you do, your workshops, and your whole philosophy. And I am now turning it over to you. I'm about to unmute everybody, so wait 1 second. Mute all. And when everybody's muted, John, turn your sound back on.
Looks like
Turn
there
your
we go.
sound.
How's that? Is that good?
Yeah, you should. Yeah, that's good.
I should be good right now. Yeah. Kevin, great to see you again. Nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation to come and speak to your group. It's nice to see some familiar names there. I hope I don't bore those familiar names to death because they probably have had enough of me. But folks who haven't been to the Palouse with Kevin, those are great trips. I do 10 people, sometimes 12 because I have beggars that want to come along. But Kevin probably knows the Palouse even better than I do. I've been going out there for this will be my 20th and 21st trips, I think, this year for me. So I think you got me beat with that probably, Kevin.
Oh, it's not a contest. It's just a love of a happy place.
The heck, it isn't a competition. What do you mean?
Oh, is it? Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to come through with stickers on the side of my vehicle this time on how many trips I've done. Like,
Well, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I live in Seattle and I have not been to the Palouse at all.
Who said that?
John.
No, my gosh, you have to go there. It's like, I think it was John Shaw when he was asked, if you could pick just one place to ever photograph and be restricted to that, he mentioned that it was the Palouse.
Yeah, this year I'll get out there, I'm hoping.
There you go. Go with Kevin. He's got a spot open.
Okay.
He'll probably charge you double.
probably.
Hey, folks, again, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get ready to have a dialogue with you. Let me do this. Make sure that I've got the share sound on. That's good. Let me hit this. Okay. And Robin and I think Michelle have probably seen this, but I tend to change it and put in some new images. But when Kevin had asked me to come speak to his group, generally, if it's a first time with a photo club or a keynote lecture somewhere, or a group like this, I like to go back to this particular presentation because it's what my heart is about. And it came about, as with most of my presentations, come about because of my own experiences with photography. So Kevin has said, to speak about my process and kind of how I show up as a photographer. But I think that'll become apparent as we go through this discussion. So let's get started. If we go back to the masters of photography, and certainly Ansel is one of those that we all look up to, Ansel said you bring to the act of photography all the pictures you've seen, the books you've read, the music you've heard, the people you've loved. And, I like to add to that to make it a little more personal. The recent puppy dog that you got, the kitty cat that you had to put down, a lost loved one. I lost my mom this year. She lived 100 years, which was fantastic, but certainly that colored my life. And then what Ansel's saying here, and I would agree with, is that your life colors your photography. And the more we get in touch with that reality that our life experiences, our vision is what we bring to the act of photography, the more I think we can get images that reflect that. But I've come to realize that, the images that I really care about are those images that are created here, in my heart, not necessarily with the technical. And look, the technical is important. I get it. Understanding depth of field and those types of things are important. But I really believe that the images that I resonate with, and hopefully that you resonate with mine, come from the heart. And so I'm known for this little expression, I think, at this point: photograph what makes your heart sing, because and my heart sings about a number of different things. Old ambulances being recovered by Mother Nature is one. Down in San Miguel, Mexico, and the beautiful bougainvillea leaves that are, all over the ground, and simplicity. I don't consider myself a people photographer. I'm working on that. But boy, when you have a beautiful granddaughter sitting around willing to pose, it certainly makes it a little easier. So certainly my grandchildren make my heart sing. Had an opportunity to go photograph at a boxing match way outside of my comfort zone, but realized how much I enjoyed that experience. And I'm like many of you, a big fan of floral photography, and every year at the Longwood Gardens, we get the African blue poppies. It used to be that nobody knew, and so you were one of 5 people in the phone chain that got to see them. But now the entire universe descends on Longwood Gardens in mid-May, or March rather. So that's not too much fun. This is Henry Mercer's Fonthill Castle, great philanthropist, in my backyard here. It's about a mile from where I live. Waited years to get that frost and leaves and beautiful first light. These are the things that certainly make my heart sing. Kevin and I love the Palouse, and my nickname is Skyman. I just love great skies, and to be up at Steptoe Butte and have that killer sky going, I mean, nothing makes my heart sing more than that. I also like simplicity. And again, we're talking about photographing just as a first principle, if you will, to photograph what makes your heart sing. And I think you're going to be on a good path. So let me share another thing that makes my heart sing. I was happy to know that John, when we were doing our testing here, wanted to make sure the sound was working on that. And John says, "Hey, that's Maynard Ferguson," which just makes me so happy, because I grew up idolizing Maynard Ferguson. And then in 2005, I took my son to see Maynard at the local high school here in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. And I made this photograph, as well as a number of others that I'll show here. And but I was using my very first Canon 1D Mark II N. So my very first digital DSLR. And I had no idea how to process a RAW file, no clue. And so it wasn't until July of the following year, this was November of 2005, that I made the captures. July, I went to a Kelby deal down in Philadelphia, figured out how to process a RAW file, and came up with these images, and I went, hey, they're not bad. And so at that time, we didn't have Facebook or Instagram or any of that stuff, but we had photo.net. And so I put up that first picture, this one, I put this up on photo.net. Oops. Oh, no, no, I didn't do that. Sorry. Can never get enough of Maynard. But anyways, that picture went up the next morning. So I'm sorry, let me give you the dates here. So I said in July I went to that Kelby thing. So on August the 23rd of 2006, so we're what, 8, 9 months after I made these photographs, I finally post an image up on photo.net on August 23rd, 2006. And the very next morning, I get this response. The gentleman gets on and he says, wow, that's really, really strange that you would post that picture of Maynard last night because Maynard died last night. And I was like devastated. I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, how weird is that little coincidence of the world coming together? And so I was devastated. And then Jeff Lashway gets on to photo.net. Jeff was Maynard's piano player. And he says, John, that's one of the best pictures I've seen of my boss and my dear friend who just passed away. And of course, I wrote to Jeff and said, Jeff, let me send you a copy of that. And then a light bulb went off, and I said, gee, I've got these images. And so I looked at an album, found, shoot, isn't that terrible? I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Ed Sargent. I found Ed Sargent's name, and he was the agent or tour manager for Maynard. And so I wrote an email to him and I said, look, I've got these pictures. People seem to like them of Maynard. I want to send them so the family can have them. And he was grateful for that. And then about 3 months after that, I get a phone call from Ed and he says, John, what you don't know is that 2 weeks, it was either 2 or 3, but let's say 2 weeks before Maynard passed away, he played the last notes that will ever be associated with him on a record. And so the record was in the tin, ready to be produced, and we would love to use your image on the cover of what will be the one and only Maynard Ferguson, the final album that Maynard ever released after he passed. So I go back to, so it's a fun story. It's cool. I mean, I'm forever attached to my childhood hero. I used to drive my parents insane trying to play along with Maynard, which Maynard's an upper register stratosphere trumpet player. So I wasn't very good, but I drove my parents crazy and that was worth it. But, to be associated with Maynard, how did that happen? That's the important question. That happened because I was photographing what made my heart sing. I was the only one there on a monopod with a camera making pictures of my childhood hero. Okay, so let's move a little bit to the practical. So how do we start to make images that make our heart sing? Well, part of the way we do that is to think outside of the box. And to me, when I saw this grass out in Utah many, many years ago, can I take a picture of grass? Sure, it's going to be pretty incredibly boring. But I start to ask myself, how can I represent this experience, this connection that I'm having to color, not grass necessarily? I was blown away by the beautiful colors in the grass. And so I say, hey, if I move my camera a little bit, I wonder what I get. So as I start to move my camera, I can learn or actually create something that's maybe a little more painterly. So another story here. I want to play a clip of a dear friend of mine, Jimmy Fryer. Jimmy Fryer and I played in a Dixieland band professionally for a while. I was a tuba player. Jimmy was a phenomenal, phenomenal trombone player. And to this day, he still plays at the Blue Note down in New York City. So why do I share Jimmy's story? And Jimmy's story is this. Unlike me, who practiced the requisite half hour a day because that's what your parents said you have to do in order for them to continue to pay for your lessons, Jimmy practically slept with his trombone. I mean, Jimmy, that was him recently on a recording. Jimmy sounded like that in high school. And so again, I asked that asked question that I like to ask is, how did that happen? Well, Jimmy was beyond practicing. And if we think about the correlation with camera gear, the more we know our gear, the more it gets out of the way. The last thing I want to do is be fumbling with how to do multiple exposures like this image here, because I'm losing that whole moment of connectivity with the process that I'm involved in. So knowing your equipment becomes kind of important. So then you can kind of start to move your camera over whatever, a quarter of a second, a fifth of a second. You can move your camera over longer time frames, maybe a couple seconds. You can be in the Palouse even and move your camera left and right, and get another right answer out in the Palouse, or be at the ocean. And again, painting with light. That's what we are, photographers. We're painting with light. And so we get these different answers. And as I like to steal from DeWitt Jones, another right answer than just a straight shot. So like we talked about with the Jimmy story, we can then experiment with multiple exposures to get something else that might be a little more painterly. Or we can do maybe both multiple exposures and moving our camera at the same time and combine those into one image. And the reason it's nice to know our gear as well as techniques is it allows you to yell at your best friend and say, stop the car. I want to make some photographs of those trees. He said, John, it's 12 o'clock. The light's really horrible. It's harsh and there's nothing to photograph. And after, miles, I finally got him to turn around because I knew with my understanding of technique and camera knowledge that I could go back and maybe make something that was a little more artistic. Same way in Guanajuato, Mexico. I mean, obliquely moving my camera and doing a multiple exposure of all those beautiful homes in Guanajuato. And just the last couple of thoughts here on this. This is these were slides actually done back in the day. And where I moved down, up, and then down, and the last down I squiggled. And then I didn't move my camera, and the very next photograph I made was this one. Identical scene, but now it's a multiple of whatever, 9. And then I didn't move my camera again, and the very next frame was this one. So the point being that I can become as creative as I want to if I just stop and think for a minute about different techniques, if you want to call them that, or ideas in my creative well, if you will, quiver. Diffuse glow or Orton looks are something that I've always been attracted to, but I'm not going to just shoot that. I'm going to shoot a straight shot as well as maybe something that has one sharp and one soft, and decide later whether that's a creative technique that worked. I mentioned the Orton look too. The Orton look is where we did that in film days, where we overexposed by 2 stops and made it sharp, and then we overexposed by 1 stop and made it way out of focus, and we got that nice blurry edge around the Gerber daisies there. We can still do that with the digital world. Here I'm not at f/22, I'm an 8 or something like that to get the foreground sunflower sharp, but I'm going to use a long lens and I'm going to make it go out of focus so it grows a little bigger like that. And then I'm going to put those two together and get another right answer of kind of an Orton look in the digital world. I love montages because I think this story might hopefully exemplify why. I went to Longwood Gardens on an 8-degree February day, and this is what I was greeted with. And so I completely forgot all about photographing flowers that day. And I just fell in love with all of the frost on the windows because, the conservatory is so damp inside. It was creating all this beautiful frost. But I realized that my wife would probably be annoyed because I didn't come home with flower pictures, but I wasn't overly excited about this particular image. But the idea is what I want to express really. And that is that when I got home, I was able to merge together those two, the experience with that frost, the experience with a flower, and get another right answer again, something that expresses the experience that I had better than one photograph could have. I do this often, where I will take a straight color photograph, convert it to black and white, and then invert it on occasion, not always, go out and get a piece of texture, and then come up with something else, right? And I love playing with texture as another creative choice. A lens baby, there's another one, right? I mean, when I want to stimulate my creative juices, I'm feeling kind of in a rut. A lens baby is a really good choice because it's causing me to focus on what's important in my composition and pay particular attention to my composition because lens babies are not necessarily easy. But here I hope I'm bringing you right to the sharp part of the frame first, and then you're going to gaze throughout the rest of the frame. Here, again, I'm bringing you right to the one lotus. Or in this one, I just need a little bit of sharpness around the inkwell and the pen. And I love the effect of a lens baby here. It has that feeling of nostalgia, something of a nostalgic image. One of my favorite lens baby images in New York City, Times Square, just looking at that cab driver. I mean, how can you miss? You go into the sharp part of the frame first, and then you get all that happiness swirling around, uh, creating that feeling that I often feel when I'm in the city in Times Square. And of course, Lens Baby has soft focus and they have fisheye elements. And then you can do, HDR photography with fisheye elements with a Lens Baby. I mean, the world is open to whatever your imagination. And how about, an iPhone? I mean, they're pretty darn good cameras. As a matter of fact, the joke tends to be nowadays on tours or workshops or retreats that I'm doing is, man, I'll hold up my iPhone and say, did you know this even makes phone calls? I mean, it's a darn good camera that makes phone calls too. But Duchemin is known to have said at one point a number of years ago, gear is good, vision and better. I agree with that 100%. I love gear. I'm attached to it too, but more and more and more, I understand how important vision is. And Jarvis had said, the best camera is the one you have with you. And sometimes the iPhone is good enough. I've won some awards with this iPhone photograph taken outside of Eastern State Penitentiary. I was in San Quirico, Tuscany, preparing for a group to come in. And all I had was my iPhone because I didn't want to be distracted with a big boy camera doing my job of preparing for customers. But what an amazing moment to capture this elderly couple just walking about 3 steps an hour. They were going pretty slow. And Myra looking at her mom again. These are all iPhone images, just trying to drill home the point that the gear is not what's important or near as important as you think it is. These are images, that last one from, bus stop heading down to Philadelphia one day. Silos at the place where I get my corn across the street. Tuscany, and I'll show that as a big boy shot too, but why not as an iPhone? I can't get HDR to look this good on my real camera some days, but the iPhone seems to do a pretty darn good job. So a lot of ways we get down to capturing, images that make our heart sing is to think about this off-spoken thing called essence. And it's probably been beat to death, but let me beat it one more time here. So, do I need much more than a curly piece from a birch tree up in New England and a maple leaf to really capture the essence of fall? I suggest not. Fern spring. Can you have the whole spring? Yes. Do you need the whole spring? Maybe not. Maybe so. I don't know. Your essence of something is probably going to be different than mine. Here I am breaking the rules, which I love, love, love to break rules because I abhor the rules. I don't know who made them up, and I don't know why you believe them, but they're good guidelines, I suppose. But there's 2 here. You're not supposed to have 2s. You're supposed to have odd numbers. But folks, there's a relationship going on between these 2, and that changes everything. Capturing the essence of pink coral sand dunes, just that pile of grass barely hanging on with that last light. And back to that African blue poppy again. So here's the idea, essence for me. Here's that, hey, how you doing? That's the shot of you just showed up, you saw this incredible thing, you found a nice background, and you took a portrait. It's a lovely photograph, but I hope the essence of my experience, which was this, is a much different and much better and much stronger photograph. Again, what do you think I was drawn to? That curly cue. That's all that mattered. And as Kevin knows, this barn no longer exists in the Palouse. It was one of my favorites to photograph on the road between Pullman and Moscow. But do you need the whole barn to know it's a kind of a decrepit old barn? No. Do you need the whole red boat to know it's a red boat? No. And to me, that's what essence is about. But I don't want you to be confused that it always has to be, something that's close up or fills the frame. Here's Kevin was talking about going back in the harvest. The harvest looks like this, and to me, this is a great essence shot of the harvest, all the beautiful art that the farmers are creating, and then a harvester out there with the beautiful sky. Here we are back in Tuscany again, that iPhone shot that I quickly got my big boy camera. Again, my wife, who was photographing only the poppies up close and fully different, that would be her essence. Mine was Mr. Skyman and the whole bucolic scene. So how do we do that? Oftentimes, the best way we do that is to distill images down. At a workshop over on the eastern shore of Maryland, where Robin lives in that general area, we would take people over to this great farm with these abandoned. It's a Studebaker truck. I mean, I haven't seen one before this. And so here's what tends to happen on a workshop. They come over, they've seen this lecture, they go over and they make a photograph pretty much just like this. Excuse me. And then they want to run off and get the bicycle next to the silo or whatever. And I'm always like, wait a minute. Are you done? Well, yeah, I got my photograph of the Studebaker. I said, yeah, but remember I said you don't need to see the whole truck to know it. Yeah, they'll try one of those. And so they do something like this. And then they still want to run away. They're not taking time to distill things down to the essence or finding maybe a story shot like this. So when I tell them, hey, open the door, and they find this, all of a sudden it takes their breath away. Well, yeah, because they were ready to run away and get the next shot. And I say, nope, the next best shot is right where you are. You just need to slow down, be a little more contemplative in your approach to your photography, maybe, and see what you connect with. And there you are. The next best image is right where you are. So here's another example. We're up at Pemaquid Lighthouse, and I'm just blown away by that sunrise color happening out in the ocean, and it's reflecting on the window in the lighthouse there at Pemaquid. I adore this photograph. And, I was the only one there, though. My buddy Paul, he was down here. And you can see me if you look carefully. I'm up to the right side in an orange sweatshirt, I think, making my photographs, continuing to make my photographs. Could I have run down and gotten all these beautiful striated lines like Paul Levy did? Sure. But I've learned to pay attention to where I'm being drawn to. And I know that I'm being drawn to a location to photograph for a reason. And I would say it goes back to that Ansel quote and my thoughts about vision. So here's another thought. My buddy Bill, he's passed on now, but he would ask out loud sometimes, what if no one has ever seen something like, reflections of ripply water of fall foliage? What if no one has ever seen something like this before? How do I, as a photographer, express what I'm feeling and seeing in my photographs? That's a great question, and I think it'll help change how you photograph. And here's another exercise you can do. You can pick subjects that are outside of your comfort zone. I was asked to go photograph this Geary building in LA, the concert hall there by my buddy Dan Sniffen. And I said to Dan, I'm not going to go. I don't know how to photograph architecture, not interested. I'm a landscape photographer. Second year, I go back to visit Dan because I was in the medical device world for 35 years. I had my own agency, a sales agency there in that business marketplace. And so Dan, on the second year, he says, hey, remember I told you about that Geary building? Yeah, Dan, yeah, no, I'm not interested. Year number 3, Dan says, hey, and I'm like, Dan, how many times do I got to tell you? I would have no idea. I really don't have an interest. So on year 4, I get so sick and tired of him asking me. I knew he was going to ask. And this time I said, Dan, where's the darn building? I'll go photograph it just so you can get off my back. And I ended up producing this body of work, which I absolutely adore. And so what's the point of this exercise that I did of forcing myself to go photograph this Geary building? The point is I learned that I was in the way, that my fears, uncertainties, and doubts, my FUD, as I like to say, it was in the way of me realizing that photographing the Geary building is no different than photographing a landscape. There's really no difference at all. But I thought there was. And because of that, I just wouldn't go. And it took me 4 years to get down. Now I can't wait to go to the Guggenheim in Spain. I've photographed the EMP building up in Seattle a number of times. I find it to be absolutely a blast. So assigning yourselves projects is a good idea, is what I learned from that. And this time, my buddy Bill, who I shared a previous slide, he was a sweater designer, and he would photograph patterns really well. And so one day he said, hey, when we go to Longwood, I want you to photograph just patterns. And that's all I did that day. And it really helped me to see in a new way. And I suggest that's a great idea no matter what. Nancy Rothenberg, the great Nancy Rothenberg, who passed away in 2011, she was my mentor and a brilliant photographer. She brought a wide-angle lens to South Africa when we both went together as students to learn from Freeman Patterson. She hated a wide-angle lens, but she forced herself to use it for an entire day so that she could see the way a wide-angle lens would see. Those are great projects to assign yourself. So if you remember, I said I'm not a people photographer. Well, my buddy Dalen gave me a project. He says, I got this really cool gym down in Philadelphia called the Front Street Gym, where, by the way, one of the more recent Rocky movies used the gym for part of their filming. But Dalen had one of his bucket list things was to go and learn how to box and actually win a boxing match. And so the first time I went down there, this is going to sound really funny, but I think it proves the point. I didn't make a photograph of Dalen at all. I just photographed the cool gym inside. And then Dalen finally said to me, he says, John, what are you doing? You're photographing a gym with no people in it. It makes no sense. Well, it did to me because of FUD, fears, uncertainties, and doubts about how do I photograph a person. I had no clue. And so thankfully, Dalen became a willing model and sat and posed without me having to say a word. And these grungy old HDR images, and I've chosen not to reprocess them for this presentation, which I probably would if I were ever going to use them, because this is back in early HDR days when we were having a blast, like 2008. But I keep them in there just to make another point. We evolve as photographers as we evolve as human beings, and we learn new techniques and new technologies and so forth. And so this is how I was back then. And, would it be different today? Yeah, probably. But what a great experience to do this and force myself to be outside of that comfort zone and come up with I think, some interesting images from this experience. Remember these two big windows and all that beautiful window light coming in on this pretty dark scene. I have another story later in the presentation. Something I'm always helping students to understand is how important it is to stay with the subject for at least an hour. I mean, sometimes people, again, back to that Studebaker, they want to run away so quickly. And I think it makes sense to stay for a while. So I would go buy flowers from my wife at Costco, come home, and I get a nice kiss on the cheek and thank you, honey. And then about 10 minutes later, I would abscond with those flowers, go in the foyer of our house where I had a huge window with beautiful light, and I'd start photographing the flowers. Well, unfortunately, my wife kind of figured that out and no longer said thank you, or I never got another kiss out of bringing flowers home, because she realized they really weren't for her. I mean, they were. I mean, I had the best intentions, Robin. I really did. I really did. but I just couldn't help myself. But, you know, by staying with them for a while and working with a diffuser and a close-up lens and a macro lens and a teleconverter, I was learning all about what it takes to get in close to these beautiful dahlias. So now here's, if you look at the bottom left, it says Kathy Barclay. Well, you know, about 2016, she says to me, you know, I think I'd like to try this photography thing because you're always buying me flowers that aren't for me. So look, she's got this waterfall of wisteria and she's got a beautiful tulip picture. So now she's become quite an accomplished photographer herself. And we do a lot of workshops together. Probably in my heart, you know, I'm a black and white photographer primarily, but I like both. I like both a lot, actually. I can't be like my good friend Cole Thompson, you know, who's only black and white. I get too in love with color sometimes. But I love this quote because it resonates with me. With color, we look at the photograph. With black and white, we look into the photograph, into the soul of the photograph. And that really resonates with me because oftentimes when you strip color away, you're left with the essence again, or the bones, or however you want to say it. So a couple of examples. I'm up at another Geary building in Boston, the MIT building. There's a Geary structure there. So what am I attracted to here? I think it's pretty easy. And if you were live, you would say, you know, the pattern. Okay, great. So it wasn't color, so I'm going to take the color away so that you're seeing the pattern. Another example. I want you to notice not which one you like better. That's not the right question. The right question is, how do you feel about my daughter Brittany in color versus black and white? They are two dramatically different feelings. And that's the really important part of this little discussion on black and white. We're not just clicking the button to make something black and white because it's cool to do. No, I'm choosing black and white because it's making me feel a specific way. And that's what I want to convey. Or it's removing my visceral reaction to color, which is all I see, and it's not allowing me to see through that color to something more, which might be graphic design, or might be the incredible weathered faces of these farmers that we hire as models down in San Miguel. I mean, to me, the color would take away from your experience of this incredible human, just like it would with this one. The color would distract. And so I'm removing it very purposefully so it does not take away from what I, the photographer, want you to see. And that is the beautiful faces and the lives lived in those faces. So what we've been talking about here in this presentation a little bit is this idea that, or at least alluding to the idea that, you know, cameras don't create images. It's just a light box. It's a really pretty sophisticated light box nowadays with digital because, you know, it's a little computer. But really, a camera doesn't know how to focus just on that slice of the rose on the left. I have to do that. A camera doesn't know how to put stuff in front of the lens to create this ethereal feeling in front of that bud on the tree outside of my front door. I need to know how to do that. So the point I want to make is that cameras don't create images. You do. And beyond that, you're responsible for every square millimeter of your frame. You're responsible equally for what's in the frame and what's not in the frame. Those are both equally important, in my opinion. So to the meat of the presentation from here to the end, it's more of the how do we do this stuff. So you have to be patient. You have to learn to be able to be still and allow yourself to be taken. And so that's my latest mantra. Learn to be taken. And what I mean by that is I think we've been saying it wrong for years. I don't think we take pictures. I don't think we make photographs. That's not the process. The process is we show up in neutral, or at least try our best to show up where we have no preconceived ideas, notions, nothing. We're in neutral, ready to engage and be taken. So we don't take pictures. We are just receiving something, and we are taken first by rhythm, by grace, by joy, by sadness, by contrast, by color. I don't care what it is, but it's important that you learn to name what you're being taken by. So I firmly believe now that I am out there waiting to be taken, or as a customer just said in Scotland, waiting to be found. I loved when she said that. I'm waiting to be found by the light, by whatever. And then we must do something with that. And so here's my experience. I was in the Poconos one year, 2 hours of photography. I'm dead tired. I get to a waterfall. The waterfall's 40 feet tall. I'm exhausted. I got 45 pounds of gear on my back. I take the gear off, put it down. I walk up the waterfall, on the side of the waterfall. I sit on a rock, much like this one in the Smokies here. And I sit on that rock and I look around and I say, my gosh, I am so glad I did not bring my gear up here because there's nothing to photograph. And then I sat for 20 minutes and got myself in neutral and got myself out of all of the things that I thought should be there that weren't there. Got myself back into neutral. And then this happened. I'm surrounded by the music of the gentle flowing stream. It speaks to me with whispers of ages past. I ponder the stories that have been told to those who have walked along its path. And I'm drawn to the beauty of the tender little fern, its elegance, its beauty, and its grace. It sits among the lush green moss, rightful heir to this sacred place. And then I remember what brought me here. And I say a prayer of thanks for the journey that has set me free. And as I look to capture the moment, now I see. You see, as I sat for 20 minutes and got myself back into neutral and I was still, and I learned to let the image come to me, I had to scramble down, get my gear, and make a ton of photographs. I had to get to where I was able to be taken. If you don't believe me, how about Bresson, who says a photograph is neither taken nor seized by force, it offers itself up. The question is, are you open to being taken? Are you open to the gifts that are constantly being offered to you, but you're not in neutral? So here we are, back to Dalen, the boxer, the two big window lights cascading down on Marley, his daughter. But guess what, where I'm at? I'm in complete FUD. Fears, uncertainties, and doubts. Why? Because I'm not a people photographer. I've told you that 3 times. Pay attention. So seriously, I'm sitting there with a 7200 2.8 lens in my lap, and this is in front of me, and I'm not taking a picture. Well, I don't know how. Can I cut her? Where do I cut her off? At the waist, at the chest, at the toes? Do I include all of her? I don't have her arms, so I put the camera down. I don't take a picture because I'm too afraid. And then I say to myself, what on earth? Just take a freaking photograph. And I look at the back of the camera after I made this and I went, oh, I kind of like that. And so I'm not going to stop. And I make another one. And make another one. I have zero recollection of my time with Dalen the boxer that day. But this experience was so visceral for me that I now feel comfortable saying, you know what? I'm a people photographer. And I honestly don't care if they fit the rules of people photography. I just don't. Because I love them. And so did Dalen and his family when I gave them this print of that experience. So once again, I'm in the way. I was in the way, and I generally am in the way anytime I run into these. So I've learned to just be still, be quiet, and try in this case. Do you need to go on a trip with Kevin Raber to all the great places that he goes to? Yes, you should. I'm sure Kevin would appreciate that. Or do you need to go with Barclay or Drew or all these great people out there, or Tony Sweet, all these people that Kevin and I call our friends? Yeah, of course, it's fun. You know, those are cool places. But the reality is, to make images that make your heart sing, you don't need to go anywhere special. You can do it in your own backyard. So here I am a mile away from my house with that last image. I'm in my backyard. I'm literally in my backyard, frost on a leaf. And as we go through a few more backyard shots, you know, you think beyond the capture, you have this overly saturated, gaudy image. I mean, if that's what you want to do, you can do that, right? Because it was Ansel Adams who said photography is more than a medium for a factual communication of ideas. It's actually a creative art. Well, Ansel would have loved Photoshop and probably even AI. Well, I hope not AI, but AI for like removing stuff, great, but not to create images. I don't think our group here is maybe into that much of AI. But here I am making a completely different photograph of the same thing, and then using my creativity to remove color and add it in where I want to. You know, these are just creative suggestions to use the tools available in your to create images that meet up with your own unique vision, right? Here I am again on a foggy day going about a mile from my house, right around the corner from that last image here, breaking the rules, cutting things in half. I like to do that. That same silo on a different day, that's where I go to get my corn. I ride my bicycle there. I had my iPhone with me, make another photograph. Go back to the lake, do another cut in half image just to tick off all the rule followers. I'm riding my bike again on one of my long rides, 28-mile ride that I do. Not real long, but. And I see this, I hustle home, get my camera and make a photograph. Another bike ride day, run back and make another photograph. I mean, it's all right there in your backyard. Don't have to go very far. But again, what does it take? Practice, 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 practice. Another musical analogy. You know, hey, Mom, I want to learn the guitar, Mom. Oh, son, that's fine, but you know, you're going to have to practice. Well, I know that. I know I have to practice. You know, well, son, how long are you willing to practice for? Mom, I've been thinking a lot about that because I knew you'd ask. I am going to practice 1 hour every month if it kills me. You know, and people laugh at that idea, but we run out and spend thousands of dollars on camera gear and Lightroom and computers and drives and memory cards. And sometimes people practice photography once a month, you know. And so we got to get out there and actually do it. And, you know, by the way, before I go on this one, practice can be doing what you're doing right now. This is a healthy thing to do, to engage in these types of dialogues, or to look at images on Instagram or what have you. But nothing beats having your camera with you and making photographs. And just to circle all the way back here to what Ansel said, here's Ernst Haas saying the same thing. The limitations of photography are in yourself, for what we see is only what we are. That's kind of one of the main takeaways that I'm hoping you're going to go away with. Who you are should be slathered all over your photography, right? And the more we get in touch with who we are and how we see the world. So just a little suggestion to be careful with feelings of inadequacy. I know I can raise my hand and say I've been with other photographers where I feel completely inadequate. And I wonder, when they're over there looking through their viewfinder and they're going like this, oh my God, I love this. And they're doing happy dances. And I'm sitting there going, what? Have you ever had that experience? I have many times and still do. You know, I'll look at somebody's images after a workshop and go, what the heck? I had no clue that was sitting right in front of me. What a creative idea, what have you. So feelings of inadequacy are real. They're human. Just be careful when you're having them and push them aside gently and lovingly, and just do the best you can do. I love this one. Don't tell anybody what you can and can't do. I'm at a Zabriskie Point one day, and there's a guy next to me. He's 5'2". I'm 6'6". If it's easier, I'm 5'18". So there's, 16 inches of difference between this guy next to me, and he's looking at me, and I'm moving my camera at this location. I'm moving my camera up and down, and I'm swiping my camera. And you ever have that feeling, and there's somebody next to you, and they're looking at you. Well, finally, I look down at this guy, and he looks up at me, and he says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I look back down at him, and I say, "I'm doing intentional camera movement, swipes." And he looks up at me, and I kid you not, this is exactly word for word what he said. 5'2", I'm 6'6". This is what he said. Well, that's stupid. That's a lot of courage, I tell you. 5'2", I'm 6'6". Now, the good news is there was a park ranger there. So my initial instinct, which was to pash him over the head and make him 5 foot. I couldn't do that because I would have been kicked out of the park. But in my mind, there's 3 reactions when somebody kind of intimates or outwardly tells you you're stupid, like this guy did. The second one would be, yeah, you're right. That's kind of dumb. And why? Because we're feeling like, oh, maybe this is stupid and maybe I shouldn't do it. But not me. I turned my camera around and I said to him, yeah, but look, I'm making patchwork quilts. And his response was, that is really cool. And so guess what happened for the next 30 minutes or 20 minutes or so? Hey, what settings did you use to do that? So we went full circle from that stupid to, man, this is fun. So don't let anybody tell you what you can and can't do. And do just once what others say you can't do, and never pay attention to their limitations again. And that's what's happening there, right? So he had these limitations imposed on himself that swipes had to be on trees or whatever, right? Or intentional camera movement can only be on certain subjects, and wasn't willing to play, right? And here I am at an out of Chicago event, and I've got 3 top-notch, brilliant photographers next to me. I say, man, I'm going to make a photograph. And what it's a photograph of, it is 104 degrees this particular day, August, bright ball blue skies, 12 o'clock noon. It's lunchtime. The 3 brilliant photographers, I'm going to lunch, John. There's nothing there. I said, okay, go ahead. And I knew that even though I'm pointing into incredible glary water, I'm pointing into the glariest part of the water, I'm underexposed by 4 stops, and I knew I would get this cool image. I'm not going to pay attention to their limitations of them saying, there's nothing to do. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to continue to play. And then as my buddy DeWitt Jones, who I was just with last week again, that's part of the contemplative photography retreat that we've been doing every year out in the island of Molokai that Kevin referred to earlier. I just got back from that literally 2 days ago, so I'm still a little tired. But DeWitt was there and Ricky Cook was there. They're both Nat Geo photographers, retired. And I do that retreat with a fellow named Flint Sparks, who is a Zen priest, a psychologist, and just one of the finest human beings I've ever met in my lifetime. It's a real pleasure to work with him. But if you don't know DeWitt's work, he's all about a website that he has called Celebrate What's Right with the World. And here's the idea. I'm with my buddy Bill, the sweater designer. He's whistling at Tom's Creek. I hate Tom's Creek because I've never made a good picture at Tom's Creek. And probably because of all the things I've done wrong that I've shared that you shouldn't do wrong in this presentation, right? I bring my bad attitude with me, the whole deal. And so he's off whistling, and I'm totally annoyed. And so this is about the best I could do, which is a terrible photograph. I'm trying to be fancy and be out of focus and all this stuff. Well, and I'm just annoyed because of Bill's whistling. So I walk back to my car, and as I do, that branch that bifurcates the image in the middle there, that little branch in the middle of the tree, I look up and I see something. I go to my car, get my macro lens, and I make a celebration of what's right with the world. And I could hear DeWitt in my head. I mean, you bring to the act of photography your attitude too, right? And along with what Mitchell talked about. And my attitude stunk. But when I finally started to think about how I could celebrate what's right with the world, I knew that then I might be able to find something worthy to photograph. So be careful of expectations. You go to the Smoky Mountains and you're supposed to have fog. What do if there's no fog at Sparks Lane? Do you go home? A lot of people do, because they're so focused on the expectation of the image that they saw of somebody else's, rather than being in neutral again and open to whatever's there to be taken by. Right? So be careful of the expectations that you bring to the act of photography. And don't go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and blaze your own trail with images that are uniquely yours. This is one of those images from that experience with the Geary building. I hadn't seen any images from the Geary building before I went there, and then I went and looked, and I didn't see any that looked anything like mine. Now you see a bunch of them. Not saying that I pioneered it in any way, shape, or form. That's not my point. I'm sure there were images much like mine I created, but I wanted to leave a path that were genuinely and honestly my images. Kevin, just so you know, we can hear you if you want to just mute for a minute. I think that's you. We're probably hearing. So it's not what you look at that matters. It's what you see. That Geary building again, I see it as a place to make derivative art from the art that Geary created. Other people see it as a place to go listen to music at the concert hall. So as we start getting towards the end here, we just got about 20 slides left. That'll go pretty quickly. We've been talking about this idea of dream, believe, create. I was giving this is iteration 17 of a lecture I've been doing for a number of years. Back in iteration 2 or 3, Liz Lawler was in the audience. Liz is a wonderful friend, was a wonderful friend, and a very, very smart woman. She's a PhD, and she wrote books on science. She taught, professor. And all of a sudden I heard this just barely audible as I was doing a live presentation. I heard her say, "But it's so hard." And it just really caught me off guard, and to the point where I embarrassed her, unfortunately. I said, "Well, Liz, was that you?" "Yes." "What did you say?" She says, "Oh my gosh, it's so hard sometimes." "What's hard, Liz?" And she couldn't even say the word. She pointed and she said the second word. And I went, "Believe?" And I drove home that night thinking deeply about that, because how is believing that you can be a good photographer hard for a PhD professor who writes books on science? How can that possibly be hard? But man, sometimes creative stuff is hard. And I realized she was right on the money. Believing was the key to everything. And here's the little secret now. If you can get back to dreaming what you want your images to look like and believe that you can do that, the creative part of photography becomes a whole lot easier. So believe, because I didn't believe I could make a stick figure, never mind create a good photograph. But it was Nancy Rotenberg, my mentor, who helped me believe that I and you and everybody does have creative capabilities. See, if one advances confidently in the direction of your dreams and endeavors to live a life which you imagined, meaning a photographer that creates wonderful images, you will meet with success, unexpected success even, in the common hours. So I would say then, go boldly. What you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So inertia, just get out and start making images that make your heart sing. Because you have experiences and talents that are exclusive to you. Trust, or that believe word again. You just have to trust them. We all have creative capabilities, talents that are exclusive to us. And that's why our images, some of different than others, right? Your images should be different than my images, than Kevin's images, than Wayne's, than Michelle's, than on and on and on. A quick little video coming up after this slide. Great dancers are not great because of their technique. Great dancers are great because of their passion. Great photographers are not great because of their technique. They're great because of their passion. It's passion that I feel when I look at imagery that I'm taken by. It's passion that is clearly driving their photography. So I'm going to show a quick little video, and I'm going to try to talk over that video. I'll scrub through it so it goes a little faster. But I want to make a good point with this. If I turn that down and talk, can you still hear me? Yes? Well, what we have here is somebody playing the violin. The next question I would ask if you're alive is, what do you think? A pretty good violinist. Matter of fact, it happens to be Joshua Bell. Joshua Bell is a world-renowned violinist. But what are the people doing? They're not even paying attention. Scrub ahead a little. So he's playing another tune. No, but just a very few people. Granted, it's the subway, right? So they're probably got something on their mind. They're going to work. And finally, we have this gal. This gal here with her shopping bag. And let's see what she has to say here in a minute. Finally, a few people. Okay, here we go. He finally says, hang on. I saw you at the Library of Congress last night. So here they are doing, the Washington Post did just an experiment. What would happen if we put Joshua Bell with a ball cap on with $1 million Stradivarius with the violin case open down in the subway the night after he was knighted or dubbed a national treasure, and people paid $1,000 a ticket to go see him at the Library of Congress, and here he is in the subway, and I think if I remember the numbers right, 1,000 people walked by, or 3,000 people rather, walked by, never even knew who Joshua Bell was there. So why do I share that? And how do I relate it to photography? The last piece of dialogue at the end of the wonderful movie called August Rush, that little boy says, the music is all around us. All you have to do is listen. Well, the images are all around us. All you have to do is be in neutral and open to see. How many Joshua Bells have you walked by? I know I've walked by far too many. I try not to anymore. I try to pay attention to what I'm being taken by all the time, so I'm not walking by Joshua Bell anymore. So the invitation today of this presentation is to listen to your feelings and then use them in your work. That's the big invitation. And you do that by developing your vision, and then you master the technical aspects like the trombone story with Jimmy. But above all, I'm asking you to photograph what makes your heart sing and engage your heart in this thing called photography. See, connecting with emotions will allow your images to sing. So a story to tidy this all up. I went and made this gaudy HDR happy image because I went to a place called Henryton in Maryland many, many years ago. And when I got home, I started processing the images, and I did this. And then Jackie, who was on that trip with me, she sent me an article about Henryton, says, do you know what happened there? And I said, nope, don't care. She followed up after I wrote that really uncomfortable email back. And she says, no, John, seriously, you need to stop what you're doing and read what happened at Henryton before you do anything else with your images. And so I did, and I was horrified. Henryton was a place for basically what I'll call disposed of children, children who had deformities, children who had mental handicaps that were so difficult that the families could not handle it. And so they sent them to Henryton. And the reason Henryton was shut down is because of the brutal abuse of these castaway children, sexual abuse, physical abuse to the point of death. And then they would bury them out back. Why? Because nobody would care. Nobody would ever know they were dead. I was horrified. And so I went from happy feelings of being with my friends. And again, I want to be careful here. This is a perfectly good photograph for the feelings I was having up until I read that article. But my feelings changed, and this all hopefully puts a exclamation point on a lot of things I'm sharing, that you bring you in your life, you bring your experiences, what you read, Ansel said. And this is what I read. And so my feelings changed from happiness to shame. Why shame? How could I be there and make photographs of this sacred place? Sacred for those children. This horrific place for the people who perpetrated this incredible crime against these children. And so I've never showed these photographs other than this one. I can't do it. It would be inappropriate. But I do use this image to illustrate what can happen. And so I stopped and I started reprocessing images. The light of truth and a ray of hope for these poor kids. Unfortunately, I have a connection to abuse myself. So it was a really, really emotional moment of impact. So is it always like this? No, my gosh, you're sitting in front of a tree. Are you having this visceral of a response? No, but are you having a connection because you're taken by something? You absolutely are. And the more you can believe that and tap into what that is, the stronger your photographs will be. I promise that. It's not if, I promise that. So let's make it a little brighter. So what do we really need to do in these last two slides? We need to show up mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of it. The more we can show up as whole human beings, open to being taken, the deeper our photographs will be. And those photographs will be deeper and more meaningful for those people who view your work. So let's find joy in the journey. Let's find joy in this thing we call photography. Because, you could be working. Thankfully, I call this my job now, and I'm pretty blessed to be able to call this my job. But instead, I'm having a blast. Dalen thinks it would be really hysterically funny to have a picture of him, as he would say, beating the snot out of me. I didn't think it was all that funny, but he thought it would make fun. So, when out photographing, it's with a sense of play, no bounds in sight, anything's possible, and the unexpected welcome. That's how I want to show up. Just like when my buddy Dan, this is not Dan, it's the guy ahead of us, in the Palouse, and Kevin, this was the previous barbershop, not the new one that he's in now, where the old Pete's place. But this felt like Norman Rockwell. I mean, I had to go back to the hotel, get my camera, tripod set up, and make this photograph of this great unexpected, no bounds in sight, playful image. So as we finish, my invitation is to go back to dreaming big. What do you want your photography to look like, be like? And like Liz finally could, and I could, believe that you can achieve your dreams. And then just go out and make images that make your heart sing. Create your own unique images. So thank you for taking the time to spend this time with me. I know you have a choice. I feel like an airline commercial when I say this. You have a choice of who you fly with. Well, you have a choice of who you listen to. There's a lot of shows out there and a lot of things going on. And the fact that you took time today to honor me with your presence is greatly appreciated. Thank you for that. And I'll stop sharing. I hope Kevin's okay. The Cole and John show, we actually have over 11, I think we got 1,100 followers now, which boggles our mind that people want to listen to us chit chat. It's a lot of fun. They're short little videos, anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes at the very most. Normally they're around 8 or 9 minutes. Just little thoughts about photography. Rarely do we talk about gear. Yep, I'm on, and so it's at YouTube at the Cole and John Show, 7236. Or if you just look up Cole and John Show, it should come up. I do have a website. I do lead workshops, but I don't want to cut into Kevin's time with his. He's a great guy to go with. If you
Oh, feel free to though, John.
I'd sure appreciate that. But and then of course I'm on Instagram most of the time. So okay, let me go turn this off so I can see who's here. But again, thank you for the time. Hopefully something resonated and inspired or whatever might happen in a situation like this.
Well, John, thanks, man. Inspiring photography, and it's funny, I don't think I ever really thought I was photographing from the heart. And then Steve Gosling and I became friends many, many years ago, and that's something he always talked about. Actually, I think, if we're really good, we are photographing from the heart a lot of times, but we need to recognize that that's where it's coming from.
Yeah. Yep.
I have a tendency to blast through a scene, and maybe because either I'm getting older or smarter, I've learned how to slow down a little bit and look at things differently. The picture you did of the Studebaker truck in the barn,
Yep.
I always encourage people, and like yourself, I see this happen all the time, is that, they take the overall shot, which I call the postcard picture,
Sure.
but they don't move in close to find the abstract in the rust, or the door handle with, how many times has a door handle been opened? There's stories and all these other things, and I call them pictures in pictures. I mean, essentially, it's amazing what one object can provide you if you really step into the scene and look at it too. So, where I think we're on the same course. One of these days when we're out in the Palouse together, we should either get there early enough or stay late enough that we can actually photograph together.
Actually go together. We always see each other. We have nice pleasantries, but I would enjoy that, Kevin.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I think we're going to be there at pretty much the same time this year.
Yeah, we are. Definitely. And of course, you come from the old Pennsylvania area where I grew up and everything too. So that's always like that 215 area code. So
that's right. That's right. Well, let's see if anybody's got a question in there.
Yeah, we didn't have any questions come up during the presentation. You covered everything really well.
But anybody that has one, unmute yourself and ask. We're a small enough group right now that you could do that. Anybody?
I think people.
I just wanted to.
Maybe.
There's one.
I wanted to add that this was a very inspirational presentation. Got a lot out of it. I want to thank you, John. As a guy that's been photographing 53 years now, I still find something to learn. So very inspirational, and it's going to prompt me to readjust how I'm photographing and what I'm photographing. So thank you.
Thank you, Dieter. That's very kind feedback. I appreciate that. And it reminds me, Kevin, I have lecture notes in a PDF form. If I sent those to you, how would people be able to get those notes?
Well, when I put your video up, it'll be up in an article, which is linked. You can link and it takes you to the face or the YouTube one is embedded,
Okay.
and I can also put a download link in the same article where people can download the notes.
Perfect. I will do. So I will send to those listening to this later or right now live. I'm going to send him two documents. One is a little ebook I create. I know it's going to surprise you. Photograph what makes your heart sing. But then the actual lecture notes, and the lecture notes will have links to like DeWitt Jones to Celebrate What's Right, and it'll also have all of the quotes that I used in case you wanted to have those, and then all the key concepts that I discussed. So you're welcome to have both of those and download those when he gives you those links.
Sounds good. Hey, John, are you printing your own work?
I do, yes. I have a P800.
Okay, good. Well, if you ever feel like, if you
Am
ever
I
want
a
to,
good printer? No.
well, why don't you come out to Indianapolis sometime and we'll have a printing fest.
I would, you know what, in very, very serious about that. I would be happy to come out there and pay to go through that course. That's what I need to do.
That's a fun course,
Maybe I
but
could actually print something
yeah, well,
worthwhile.
we print a lot of prints during that course, and it's amazing. Everybody thinks they make a great print the first time, and then with some of the things we show, you can see the progression. And it's
Yeah.
funny, like a lot of things in photography, some of the pictures you showed, it's every picture can look great, but it's when you start comparing them to other images of the same one that you really begin to see the differences where,
Yes.
you
Yes.
open up shadows or, bring in highlights and, crop in a little bit and watch your edges, the whole 10
All
yards.
that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's always a good way to do it. I'd like to come out to Hawaii and try to visit my old stomping grounds out there and do your retreat. Are you using that the leper place, the leper hospital as your
No,
retreat?
no, no, no. You can't use any of that down there. That's all protected.
Okay, so
So,
you
so Ricky Cook, the National Geographic photographer that I work with, it's his property. He and Bronwyn
oh,
own a piece of property. So Ricky is from the Cook family plantations of pineapples,
okay.
and their family owned at one point 100,000 acres on Molokai, and they owned the whole Molokai Ranch. And so Ricky, he grew up there.
Oh,
That was a
excellent.
hunting lodge. So the hunting lodge has been converted into a sanctuary for running retreats. Just an FYI, as of this year, they're stopping because Bronwyn just had her leg amputated below the knee, his wife. And so they're going to take a year to kind of reevaluate, and they're both
Okay.
turning 80 years old. So we don't know where that's going to go in Hawaii, what that's going to look like. But Flint and I will be doing the contemplative retreats stateside in Santa Fe or Sedona or somewhere in that
Cool.
area in the future. So that's on pause just for a little bit. But we are very committed because the contemplative retreats are very, very different than a workshop. And we've been blessed with incredibly good response and repeat customers who need to be refreshed once a year. There's a lot less photography and a lot more dialogue about why we photograph and our process and how we show up. We just happen to have, Ricky Cook and DeWitt Jones there, who are two brilliant National Geographic guys that are involved in that as well. And their dialogue helps, with.
The dialogue is so important. Brooks Jensen came and spent a couple days with me at our house
I saw that.
a month or, and of course, he's probably one of the most knowledgeable people when it comes to talking photography with insight into everything. And
Absolutely.
I mean, he's just got his finger on the pulse in so many places. And while we took a few pictures, the discussions we had were so enlightening and
Excellent.
just really a great guy. I hope to have him as a guest on Photo Chat sometime early part of next year
That'd
too.
be
So,
fabulous. Yeah, Brooks, I mean, I don't know how he does Here's a Thought every damn day.
oh, I don't know how he. I asked him. He sat with me and we put together one of those books. I put the book together, a book on Rust. But what this guy produces and how he manages to stay on top of everything, I feel like I'm spinning my wheels sometimes with all the work I've got
Boy,
and
do
I
I
can't
agree with
keep on
that.
top of it. It's like, how does he do it? And
He's amazing. And if you guys, I assume most of in your audience know who we're talking about.
I
Brooks
hope so.
Jensen
Lens
is the
work.
editor of Lenswork. If you're not subscribed to Lenswork, you need it. It's just a need to. You need to subscribe.
It's one of the finest photography magazines out there. And I did have
Ever.
an article up on my site on the video that I did with Brooks. So If you go
Good.
up on the site and go back
good.
about a month, you'll see some links to his magazine if you don't have it.
Yeah. And I was
Incredible.
one of my goals was to be published with a full portfolio, and that happened last year. So pretty happy about that.
And incredible stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anybody
Well,
have
let's just
any
see
other
anything
questions
else.
or comments?
Hey, I just want to, I have a thank you to John Clark. John, I only could see a few people in my little panel as I'm speaking, and it's so important that I can see somebody because it's so hard to do these things without a live audience. John, I
Yeah.
so appreciate your kindness, and I could tell that you were paying attention and had some reactions to things here and there, and that means an awful lot to me of your attention. Thank you for being a good listener and giving me that comfort that I knew that maybe somebody was paying attention today.
Cool.
I bet Holger. Is that correct? Is it Holger or Holgar?
Yeah. That's pretty good.
And you were there as well. So now I'm glad Michelle
I was
wasn't
paying
there because she
attention
would have
while I
given
was
me a hard
slurping my
time.
soup.
But I've
It's
known
beautiful
Michelle for a while.
presentation, very inspiring. I love it.
Thank you, Michelle. All right. And Robin, I know Robin doesn't have the ability, shouldn't have a microphone, but Robin might be one of the, I don't want to say the oldest because I don't want Robin, because Robin's not old. I'm old now.
I'm the oldest, John.
Well, maybe. Are you 80 yet?
I'm 80. I'll be 81 next year.
We had two 81-year-olds out in Hawaii with us. And you're all great shining examples of what I want to be as I keep doing this thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
I wish
Kevin.
we could get our message out to younger photographers. That could be a whole nother open forum topic sometime about, the generational differences in photography these days
Absolutely.
and what's going on.
Yes. Yeah. That is a group we need to get to somehow. They're doing it a different way. That's part of the problem.
Part of it's good, but
Yeah.
I think they're missing some things along the way.
Well, they could learn from wisdom of the people who have gone before them.
Yeah.
Well, John, I actually said hello to Freeman Patterson this October. I think he remembers you.
Oh, I know he remembers me. We communicate frequently.
He
Yeah.
was great. I even got a
He's
selfie
phenomenal.
with him.
One of my all-time favorites.
I came home with 10 pounds of books.
Oh, good.
Nearly
Every one of his are
crashed
great.
the airplane.
Well, good. I'm glad you had fun with Freeman.
Yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I don't want to keep blathering on because Kevin will probably get bored to tears.
Never get bored. Send me your things, John, and
Well,
I'll get them in when I get the edit done. I would like to try to get to the edit over the weekend.
okay.
If at all possible. It's busy time of year for a lot of things, but I do try to. I want to catch. I'm catching up on so many things right now, so hopefully I'll get that done real quick. And
Okay.
appreciate everybody coming by today. I
Thanks,
know
folks.
it's a busy time of year for a lot of people. Thank you.
Appreciate your
Well-
attention. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, John, thanks once again, and I'll see you out on the dusty trail somewhere.
If not sooner, or we'll chat over an
Yeah.
email, I'm sure.
For sure. Well, look, have a
Always
good
happy to
holiday,
help.
everybody.
Always happy to
Take
help
care,
you good
everyone.
guys like Kevin.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. See you, John.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye.